And welcome to another edition of Haunted Hotels. My name is Sam Baltrusis, and I'm an author and journalist. Joining me for this edition of Haunted Hotels is the one, the only, Shane Pittman. Hey, Shane, how's it going?
Hey, Sam, I'm doing good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Doing really well. So I hear that you're doing events with our mutual friend Dave Schrader.
Yeah, we're actually doing an event called the Hell Frozen Over event, and that's going to be at the Palmer House January 7th through the 9th. So, really excited about that. Really, it's really going to be a good time. The reason why it's called Hell Frozen Over is because I told Dave that it would be a cold day in hell for me to ever investigate or do an event in the north during the winter time. So he got me out for that, and yep. So Hell Frozen Over event.
I love the whole backstory. So, do you know any of the backstory to the Palmer House Hotel?
No, not really. I kind of wanted to keep it that way a little bit. It's my first time investigating there, so I want to have a lot of the experiences fresh and where I'm not influenced too much. I know Dave told me some cool things that happened as far as paranormal experiences goes, but I wanted to try to keep it as fresh for me as possible going into it.
I'm like that too. Like, so I'm, in addition to being a historian and author, I'm a clairvoyant. So I like to go to locations that I don't know the backstory to. So it doesn't kind of persuade, like, kind of, make me have a preconceived notions going into the location. And I like that you like to do that as well.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really important sometimes too, because a lot of times you can go into a certain situation kind of already influenced on what you think you're going to experience. So I think it's really important to go in there with a fresh slate as much as possible anyway. And nowadays with all of the locations now that they've been so overly saturated um, investigation wise. So it's kind of hard to hit a location that you haven't heard of before. But I think it's important to do that. Just that way you have a fresh take, and you're trying to be as unbiased as possible, especially as an investigator.
So, as an investigator, Shane, who has probably been in multiple haunted hotels, what's sort of like the telltale signs of a haunted hotel? Is it, and why are hotels specifically haunted?
Well, I think hotels are specifically haunted um, mainly because of all of the energy and the activity. All of the people that walk through um, those locations. I mean, and staying there and leaving a part of themselves there at times. Depending on the situation and what goes on. If a person died in the hotel, they spent their last moments maybe sleeping and maybe died in their sleep. You know, spent a lot of their time spent their time there. I think that um, is one of the reasons why hotels can be haunted in particular. Some of the telltale signs for me, there's this place in Union Springs, Alabama called the Josephine Hotel. And specifically, when I walk into that hotel, immediately it feels like I'm in a crowded room, but I'm not in a crowded room. It's the strangest experience ever, but it feels like I'm almost claustrophobic, where there's so many people around me, but none that I could see. It's really bizarre. But that's one of the telltale signs for me. It's just feeling the bustling of the activity, and you can feel the energy whenever you walk into these hotels.
I know exactly what you're talking about. The idea that there's energy there that you can feel. And for me, like, that's also a sign of potential residual haunting as well. And from your experience at other haunted hotels throughout the country, what would you say, like, is it more residual in nature, intelligent, or a little bit of both?
I think it's a little bit of both, depending on which location it is. Um, I think residual has a major play in it, like I was talking about before. Just the energy that's being exerted, just people living their lives, living a part of their lives in that location. They're leaving some of their energy behind. So, yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, just depending on the location and the circumstances.
And people probably know you from the Holzer Files, and unfortunately, we found out that the Holzer Files had 2 amazing seasons. So, I mean, you should definitely be proud of your work on that show. But
Thank you.
were you able to visit any haunted hotels while filming the Holzer Files?
Um, yes, we did in certain towns, but forgive me, I cannot remember. Um, I know one place that we did visit, and y'all did. It's the bed and breakfast. Lizzie Borden.
Oh,
So me and Dave, we visited there, but not to film or anything. This was just on our off time. Um, we visited there in such a an awesome location that I had never been to before. Again, it's what was one of the first for me. Um, so that was pretty cool, and we visited some others, but the names escape me right now because you know this probably just as well. When you're traveling so much, I mean, you're going to so many different locations, and everything gets jumbled up at times. So
yeah, it's
yeah,
definitely
we did it.
yeah, it's definitely a blur when you travel, and especially when you did a series. And the series, you go from one location to another. But I will point out a location that served as a hotel, the Queen Mary in California.
Oh, that's right. How could I forget that one? Yeah, absolutely. And that location was so special for me. Again, that was a first time location for me. And it was awesome because it was the first time. I think it was the first time because it was really close to, I think, the live stream event that went on there. But I think it was the first time that a team went in there with unfettered access when with no guests there at all, because of the nature of how the world is right now. Things were shut down, and there was nobody there but a skeleton crew, and we had unfettered access of the entire ship. Nothing was off limits, and that was one of the coolest experiences and one of the coolest locations that I've ever been to.
Yeah, you discussed the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast in Fall River, Massachusetts, and Dave Schrader and I filmed the shock doc called "The Curse of Lizzie Borden," and he actually kind of talked about, like, while we were on set behind the scenes, he talked about the final episode of the Holzer Files. And looking back at visiting the Queen Mary, like, what are some of the standout experiences that you had being on that ship?
Well, I think one of the coolest experiences that didn't make it on the episode that I think was really cool was whenever we were doing the walkthrough with Cindy, and Cindy was, of course, doing her reading. So me and Dave, we try to be really quiet and respectful of that while she's going through and walking through the ship. That way we don't interrupt her flow or anything that's going on. And we were walking through, we had a two camera crew. That was it. We had two guys, one in front of us, one behind us. And we were walking through, and as we were passing by each of the rooms have a television set and everything on there. The TVs were coming on,
Ooh.
turning on by themselves. And at first, me and Dave were like, okay, does somebody have a remote or something? It's something nearby. But all it was me and the cameraman in front, the cameraman in back. I was watching them the entire time. It was definitely something strange going on. Um, and then we were hearing knocks inside the room. Me and Dave would go in there to investigate. Nothing would be there. Room after room after room. It was almost like the the ship was awakening to us being there because nobody had been there for quite some time due to the pandemic and everything going on. Um, and me and Dave were talking about it. We were like, well, why didn't this air? Why didn't this we why couldn't we show this to the viewers? And Dave brought up an interesting point. He's like, well, you got to think it's a cool experience, but does it move the case file forward and the story that we were trying to tell at the time? And although it was cool experiences, it didn't really move the story forward and what we were experiencing and as far as the case file went. So I get it on that end, but that was such a cool experience. And we caught the lady in white on camera. Um, TV doesn't do it justice. I mean, I know whenever I was reviewing all of that, it was amazing how clear it was to me. And yeah, of course, the footsteps and the bustling about in the hallways that you hear, but nobody is there. Stuff like that. So many amazing experiences that we had on the Queen Mary.
Yeah, so the reason why, so I'm in addition to being on air talent, I'm also a producer as well, and I probably also too when it comes to the TVs turning on, there may be like an IP issue, like whatever's on the television, you can't air it on another show. So there may be something like that when it comes to the show.
That's a very good point. Very good point that I didn't really think about either. Yep, you're
And
right.
and it's it's weird when it comes to the paranormal shows when you have something like that, it's so profound. You're like, that should be on the show, but
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily fit into the the what we can do as producers.
Yeah, it's really amazing because there were so many cool experiences and cool evidence that we captured that was not able to air just because um, either time restraints or it didn't fit into the story we were trying to tell. A lot of different variables, but so many cool pieces of evidence that we just were not able to show people. And you know, you're bummed out at the same time because you're like, God, there's so many cool things that we've experienced. Why can't we show this? And hopefully, maybe down the line, they could do an evidence, behind the scenes stuff of the Holzer Files to show a little bit more what we experienced that didn't make air.
So for those who haven't watched the episode of the Holzer Files, I think it's, in my opinion, it's it was one of the better paranormal themed TV shows on the Travel Channel and Discovery Plus. So
Thank
the
you.
work was fantastic. Watching your team grow from the first episode to the very finale of season 2 on the Queen Mary was really kind of amazing to watch that process. And I talked to Dave like doing the filming during the filming of The Curse of Lizzie Borden, and I did talk to him about his sensitivity sort of heightened as he progressed throughout the recording. Did you find that your sensitivity to the paranormal, or maybe your skill set, kind of evolved as you were filming the Holzer Files?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There was something about it. I know in the very beginning, and a lot of people that watch the show will know this. I'm a very skittish person by nature. So I'm real jumpy at times. Try not to be, but after you're, in a dark room for 4, 6, 8 hours, a long time, sometimes, the fear gets the best of you. And over time and over time on the cases and stuff that we were doing, um, I started learning a lot more. That was one thing about Cindy and Dave is they weren't just castmates, and they weren't just um, teammates, but they were people that really helped me grow a little bit, or a lot, I should say. Um, when it came to investigating and just my career in general, I mean, they helped me along during the tough times, and even during the moments where I thought I couldn't, proceed. One place in particular was the Henderson, Texas Howard Dickinson house. Whenever I was, taking on emotions that were not my own and wanted to lash out at Dave. I mean, it was those type of experiences that really they helped me through a lot, and it taught me a lot on how to go into each investigation being as prepared as possible. And sometimes you can let your guard down, and things can happen that can shape the course of your life, or even your career. So they were very integral in helping me grow, from the beginning all the way to the end. And I'm still learning to this day, and they're still a major part of that. We're still friends, even off air. You know.
Yeah, but like after filming with Dave, and going in, I considered him a friend, but after filming The Curse of Lizzie Borden, I consider him a brother. It
Oh,
was
absolutely.
something about I mean, he had my back throughout the whole process, and it got pretty scary. And I know you guys definitely with the Holzer Files went through some really some traumatic events. going throughout, like you're getting taken over, being poked, all sorts of things happen to you. In fact, you got the hashtag poor Shane.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I kind of embraced it now. So it's like, I've got the t-shirts and all that stuff. If people want to take, they can laugh and do the hashtag poor Shane, but I laugh along with them because I think it's funny because, like I said, I'm a skittish person by nature. It's one of those things where, if I'm going to be real, and even if that's me running out of a room for the time being, you're going to see that I'm going to be real. And, you know, yeah, but got the hashtag poor Shane, and that was all Dave's fault, by the way. He was the one. He was the one that started that whole hashtag. So,
And something I noticed too with the two seasons of the Holzer Files, when they first started, like Dave was kind of like more the observer, and you were the one kind of put into like the dark, scary places. And Cindy would go in and say like Shane, don't go there, don't go there. Like she was kind of like the protector, and that
mhm.
kind of changed. Like Dave got a little bit more involved, and I even when I was filming with him too, like he was not supposed to be in the séance, and he was supposed to be like watch it from afar, and he participated. So I noticed kind of a switch where Dave decided to be more hands-on in the investigation. And I also noticed too with you, Shane, as the seasons progressed, you were less skittish as it progressed throughout the two seasons.
Yeah, yeah, that was one thing that I even noticed in my growth throughout the course of the two seasons was that I was starting to become more comfortable um, in those certain scenarios. Even though I still got scared quite a bit, but I did grow. And one thing about Dave is a lot of people don't realize this too is the first episode that we ever filmed together as a team was actually the Whaley house in San Diego. And if people remember, he was pushed quite violently, I would say, and knocked to the ground. And that was the very first episode that we filmed. So, I can understand in certain aspects, like, okay, Shane, you go and do this, you go and do that. But another thing that people don't realize is he would send me to a lot of these places, these attics or these really tight spaces and under a train because he's a big guy. I mean, you've met him, Sam, so you know
Yeah.
that he's 6 foot, what, 6'2", 6'3", something like that. And he's a big guy, so it's harder for him to get into some of these places than just to throw 5'11" Shane in there and have a go at it. And plus, I'm a lot younger than Dave, so you know, just it's easier for me to actually move. So he'll
Dave would
kill me.
probably.
He'll
Yeah,
kill
I
me
could,
for
I
saying
could,
that,
I
by
could
the
see him kind of like commenting now on this already. But also, like when it comes to the progression, I mean, I did notice like Dave becoming a little bit more proactive, but I did not know that the first episode that you guys filmed was the Whaley house, and that makes complete sense
yeah,
because he was shoved by an unseen force in that episode, and
yeah,
I would kind of be, I would like, okay, I'm just gonna stand back and let kind of like make sure that I'm safe before I move forward. And you see him kind of in season two taking like going, you know what, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna go there and participate. And I will say, like, I've seen Dave, like he did the automatic writing at the Curse of Lizzie Borden, never seen anything like it before, seeing this really, this, like as you put it, the larger 6'2" man shaking violently. And I was, it was really scary seeing that happen, but I was also really proud of him for going there and allowing himself to kind of like like lose control for it was actually like it was longer than it was on the show. It was a long time, and I having talked to him recently, he's like, Sam, I'm definitely more sensitive now than I've ever been, and almost watching him become a sensitive throughout this whole process.
well, that's one thing because I did watch the Lizzie Borden special, and that's one thing that I can say about Dave is he's an all-in team player. He's one of these guys that, you know, he will lay it all out on the field. And that's just his nature and how he is. Um, but on top of that, watching him, especially watching that moment, it kind of threw me back into some of our investigations. Um, Dave is normally the stoic, he asks the questions, but he's normally very reserved, very stoic whenever he's doing investigating. And watching that, I knew right away, it's like, you can't get more genuine than that, because I
Yep.
know how Dave is, and I know that if something like that happens, um, take notice, because it's not something that normally happens to him. It's been happening to him a lot more lately, as far as um, unusual things as far as that. But normally he's pretty much leading the show, going, doing what he has to do. But seeing those moments, take notice, because something unique and special is happening.
Yeah, when the kind of what was going on, because I was he was to my right, and I was picking up on his pain. He was fighting it. So when you see his like arm kind of being lifted up, he was fighting the automatic writing, and that's if he was like, Sam, if I just wouldn't have fought it, it would have been less painful. And so he learned a lesson about automatic writing, what Cindy does all the time. It's like you can't fight the spirit coming, like using your body as a vessel. And but I also think that working with Cindy also prepped him for that as well, and also other shows that he's worked on.
Right. Yeah, I think he knew what to expect as far as what automatic writing is, and that a spirit, pretty much takes over and kind of runs it in that moment. But I don't think he was the physical toll it would take on him, and even the spiritual and the emotional part of it. It's one of those things where um, it's hard to explain unless it happens to you. I've had, like I said, the Howard Dickinson house being taken over, the emotions and stuff. It's hard to explain it to people um, unless they experience it for themselves. It's one of
Yeah.
those things that's very tough to explain. So I think he knew what was supposed to happen with automatic writing, but didn't realize the effect it would have on him, spiritually, emotionally, physically.
So so Shane, do you think that because of all do you feel like that you're more sensitive or more empathic than you were going into the Holzer Files?
Yeah, I definitely do. And there's one thing, and I can't really talk about it much. I um, worked on a project recently, and it should be out next year, that further solidifies that. And I
Yeah.
can't really say much more about it, other than it was life changing,
Yeah.
and that's all I can say. But it was one of those things where it changed my life. It's something that's never happened to me before, and never knew could happen to me. So I know I'm being very vague, but how it is. You being a
Yeah.
producer, that I could barely say anything about anything, especially when I'm under contract.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely do feel that I'm more sensitive and more empathic since that um, amazing 2 seasons that we've had. Definitely do. Especially you can walk into a place now at me, in particular, I can walk in and immediately could tell if a spirit's there, if somebody's there. It's not like I have to use the equipment. Even though I'm a tech guy, it's not like I have to use it. It's almost like you can walk in and you can feel the energy in the place. So yeah, I would definitely say so, because before it wasn't like that for me. It wasn't something where I'd walk in, I'd use my equipment, digital recorders, stuff like that. Now I can walk in and you can just sense that someone's there. It's just different. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, no, I totally understand, and I think that that comes with experience. And it's almost like I know we can't talk about the project that you were alluding to, but it's almost like the Holzer Files prepared you for that project, and
Yeah.
uh, and I felt that way about the Curse of Lizzie Borden changed my life too, and I channeled for the first time on TV, and also being there with Dave Schrader it was like so weird
Yeah.
to do like the Holzer method with the lead from the Holzer Files. It was like really really strange.
Right. Right. But it's cool, and it's interesting that you say that. It's like, I think, you know, even Hans Holzer, he talked about all the time. He's like, there are no coincidences, right?
Right.
And it's almost like everything was laid out how it should have been. Like I had to go through those cases on the Holzer files to get to a point to where I was ready to take on another project that was going to catapult me into a different experience. You know, I think everything happens um, as it should, and sometimes, you know, it's hard to say that sometimes because life is unfair. There's a lot of bad and things that go on in the world, but I think ultimately there's, you know, there's a path that we take, and there's a path that we go and we learn from, you know, and sometimes that path is hard, and sometimes it's not that hard, you know, not as hard as some others that people, you know, their path. But yeah, I think for sure I was being prepared for something.
So to bring up the conversation back to haunted hotels, I know that you're in Georgia, Shane, and so there's a lot of haunted history in your area, and specifically in Savannah.
Right. Yes. So there's a place that I investigated. It's probably been what, 13 years now. Can't believe it's been that long, but it's the 1790 Inn. And I was drawn to that location, well, you know, because there's a story about a girl named Anna who, you know, she fell in love with a sailor. This is all the folklore of it, right? And it was told that she either jumped or was pushed off the third floor into the courtyard, and her spirit still resides there in room 204. So, you know, me 13 years ago, Shane, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go spend the night in room 204. And we had a lot of experiences, a lot of EVPs of saying Anna, um, a lot of different interesting things that happened. And it was crazy because when we stayed there, there was a lot of people saying, "Hey, do not go into that room." I'm like, "Y'all are guests here, though. Y'all are still staying in the hotel. You think that she's just confined, or whatever is here is just confined into one room?" They're like, you know, don't stay in there. That is bad juju. All of this stuff, and you know, I wouldn't say it was that at all. I just thought it was a really interesting thing. I think we were communicating with spirit, and I'm not so sure necessarily that it was Anna per se, just because I think a lot of people can project a certain story or folklore onto a location, um, almost to where they create a tulpa, which is like a thought form. You know, it's the Philip experiment. If anybody is not familiar with that, I encourage you to go check that out. Just search it out online, and it'll tell you all that you need to know about that. But I think sometimes locations are, you know, being impressed upon by people that go there and tell these stories, and may not necessarily be the end all be all of who you're communicating with. So, you know, it was a very cool place, though, very cool place, and I hope to make it back there sometime soon.
So yeah, when you brought up thought forms, I mean, or Tulpa, which is kind of like the direction I'm going to as a paranormal researcher, I do think that is very common in hotels, especially hotels that have either paranormal investigations on a regular basis or tours, and almost like the tours kind of like fuel this thought form. And I see it in Salem, Massachusetts. We have a lady in the blue that has been spotted. In fact, we have photos of her, but we don't have any proof that she actually really existed. So, it definitely, and there's also the Wayside Inn, and also in Massachusetts, and her name's Jerusha Howe, and she did exist, but I think her story and her ghost manifests because people keep telling that story over and over again.
Yeah, you know, that's so cool. But there's, I don't think people realize how powerful we really are. I use this story and this analogy over and over again. But Sam, whenever you walk into a room where two people just got done arguing, and tension is high. You don't know that there was an argument, but you walk into that room and you can feel it. A lot of people, a lot of people don't realize that that is energy being exerted from people, which we can exert that same stuff um, into our surroundings. So I don't think people realize how powerful we are, that we can actually influence our surroundings and influence people's moods and people, just from, I don't have to say a word and walk into a room. I could be upset with my wife, I could be upset with my kids, not say a word, but not just my demeanor. They don't even have to be looking at me, but I walk into the room and you can automatically feel the difference. That's amazing if you think about that. That's amazing that we have that capability. And we just shrug it off as, oh, okay, that person's being a jerk or that person's this or that, but not even taking into account, wow, I can feel the tension from that person. I can feel the energy from that person. We just shrug it off as an everyday occurrence, but that's an absolutely amazing thing. And all these people that say, oh, I don't have an intuitive bone in my body, I don't have this or that. Well, consider what I just said. You may be more intuitive than you think. If you can pick up on somebody's um, anger or when somebody's upset, then you are intuitive, whether you want to believe it or not. And I think all of us have a level of that ability. Yeah, it's just amazing. I think people lose sight of just how powerful we really are, you know?
So Shane, this is going to fall on the sort of like the week before New Year's, and what's in store for Shane Pittman in 2022?
Oh, quite a bit. I am staying busy, Sam. Like I said, I have a show coming out next year that I cannot talk about at all, unfortunately, not yet. But
Not yet.
as soon as I can, I'm going to be singing that song as
I
much as
can't wait.
possible. Um, then I'm actually working on another show that I cannot talk about,
I
but
know.
it's one where that I've created and developed, and very excited about that. It's been over a decade in the making, and things are falling together so far. So hopefully we can have that in the works for 2022. I'm also going to be doing some more events, God willing, as long as you know the world starts healing and continues healing, and we don't have any hiccups along the way. I'll be doing some more events and things like that. Um, I've got some investigations, some personal events that I'm going to be doing. So a lot going on, a lot to look forward to, um, and I'm just excited. I'm excited about it. I'm thankful that I'm able to work and do these things. Especially doing something I love.
So, having worked 2 seasons on the Holzer Files, and I know that that show changed your life and your career.
Yeah,
Was it hard to let that go?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
More than I think people realize. For a number of reasons. I mean, there's it's and again, you can attest to this. It's very difficult to find people that you click with and
Right.
that you work well together with. It's very hard, especially in the film industry and in television. It's very hard to find that perfect chemistry to where it works and it works well. And we had that. We had that. The whole team had that. Um, on top of that, there was the cast or just the crew. We had the perfect crew. I mean, again, very hard to find that perfect mix, but we had it. We had those that showed up with smiles on their faces coming to work because they were so enthused about what was going on and what we were a part of and what they were a part of. And there were so many different case files that we had left. There was so much more story to tell. And for that to be stunted like that, it's like, ugh, because there's so much more that we can tell about Hans Holzer and his case files. I mean, a lot of people don't realize he wasn't just a ghosts and spirits guy. He was into spirit photography. He was into UFOs. He was into all of these different things that we had just barely scratched the surface with. So, yeah, it's very hard to let go because along the way we got an audience and a family, but people that supported us through all of this and were very supportive and watching our show. And you know, we love that. The reason why the show was half the success it was is because of them. And you know, it's hard. Of course, I'm still in the scene and social media and stuff, and I try to stay engaged with them, but it's just hard because it feels like a letdown. It feels like, you know, there's so much more we can give you guys that's fresh and exciting. And you know, it wasn't in the cards. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to let that go. When a good thing happens, you know, you don't want to see a good thing go. And I feel that Holzer Files was a good thing, and it, you know, hopefully maybe they'll resurrect it. You know, that you know, best case scenario, hopefully that'll happen sometime in the future.
I hope so. I mean, as someone, as a viewer, when I say it was one of the best paranormal shows on TV, I mean that. I'm not just saying that. It really was well put together. Your production crew, painless. They're fantastic. Your cast was fantastic. Your subject matter, Hans Holzer, is like. It was just like the perfect mix of like everything to make this amazing show. And
Right.
I'm one of those like diehard fans that, you know, when I found out, I'm like, my chin dropped. I was emotionally upset. I couldn't imagine how it was like for the cast.
Oh, it was a gut punch. You know, because it happened during the time too where, you know, there was a shift between cable TV, and then they were doing the streaming. And you know, that was like right in the middle of season two. We were shifted over to Discovery Plus. So you know, there a lot of the people, a lot of the fans and stuff were like, "Hey, what's going on? I have to pay to watch it now." And I think that kind of messed with some of the numbers too. You know,
Yeah.
which, you know, whenever there's change and there's a shift, I mean, I can understand why companies do it. I can understand all of those different things, but I think it just, that timing kind of affected it a little bit. And it's a gut punch because you're like, I know the potential is here, and I know there's so much more to do. And seeing that potential just kind of be shelved at the moment is kind of like, oh God, you know. I understand business is business, and you want to make sure that you're making the best decisions for your business. So I'm not faulting the network. They were great to us. They um, continued to be great to us. The production company, Painless, has also been great. So Travel and Painless, and Discovery, you know, they've it's not knocking them at all. They got to do what they got to do, but you know, it's still disappointing because I know that there's so much more that could have been told. And but like I said, you never know. You never know. Maybe in the future, hopefully, something can come about and we can get back at it. That would be best case scenario.
So Shane, to give you some hope, so I was on a haunting season 10. That was like the goal was for it to be renewed for season 11. So it actually, when it switched over to Discovery Plus, so it was renewed after the switchover. So I'm now, so I was on a haunting season 10. Now I was a producer for season 11.
Oh,
So there's hope. There is hope for possibly a Holzer Files reunion in the
well,
future.
that's awesome, and congratulations. That's very cool. I mean, that's, you know, it's hard in the climate that we're in and the changes and stuff. Um, just to have a renewal like that, that's kudos to you guys. That's in this climate, it's very difficult to do. You know, so kudos to y'all. That's very good news.
And so, someone who has works on the inside, I do know that they have a lot of respect for you, for Cindy, and for Dave. And so I do. I mean, I can see a reunion in the future.
That's awesome. That means a lot to us. You know, it's one of those because it's mutual. You know, we built a lot of friendships, network side all the way down to just fans. You know, and it's one of those things. That's why I think that's why it's so disappointing because you know you work well with so many great people, and it's just, it's like bummer. But yeah, hey, I'll take you on your word on that, and hopefully, you never know, maybe down the line we can get something going. But if not, either way, I just want to say how thankful I am to have been a part of something great like that. You know, there's some projects that you can work on that you're like, it's okay. Not the Holzer Files. Like
Yeah.
whether it was not renewed or not is one of those things that I'm extremely proud of, and I think we left a mark in our own unique way, and I'm thankful that I was able to be a part of that. You know.
I strongly, and I said this to Dave too. I'm like, Dave, like this show changed the face of paranormal TV, I mean that, and it really did it. You can
That's
have
a huge compliment.
and
Thank you.
you can have a cerebral show and it can do well. I mean, I think that maybe it was a little too smart for the network, but I will say that it was a smart show, but it was a great show, and I'm hoping too that they do bring it back someday.
Yeah, you say the cerebral part. Yeah, I think it was one of those shows that it made you think. It's one of those things that really made you think, and that's why I was excited to sign on for it, is because it wasn't like a lot of other paranormal shows, and not knocking those shows, because I'm a fan too. I mean, I'm a fan of a wide range of paranormal content out there and the people that are associated with it. But I knew it was something different. As a fan, I knew that this is something that hasn't been done before, quite like this. So that's why I had the appeal. It had the appeal because it was something different.
So Shane, if you could talk to Hans Holzer, what would you say to him?
Um, First thing I would say is thank you. Thank you for your contribution to the field. Because in a lot of ways he was a pioneer, and in times where what he was doing was taboo and it was frowned upon in a lot of ways, especially um, working with uh, psychic mediums and trans mediums. It was taboo in a sense in his time. So I'd want to say thank you. I'd also want to say, hey, look, I know that you hated technology, but we've come a long way now. And we've got some things that can test the atmosphere. And I think it could be beneficial, because a lot of people don't realize too, he absolutely hated technology, like ghost hunting gear and all that stuff of that time. He was like, oh, it's rubbish. And even up into his later years, he was like, oh, you don't need that. All you need is a good transmedium, and and you're good to go. You don't need anything else. So I would just say, hey, look, we have come a long way. Would you entertain this? Talk to him. And I would also say, thank you for passing on your knowledge and stuff to Alexandra, because she's an investigator and a sensitive in her own right. And she's carrying on the family name in a lot of ways. And I would tell him, hey, you did a good job. Thank you for that. You know, and that's just some of the things I would say. I'd probably say a whole lot more, but that's just what comes to mind right now. So,
So, also too, like you mentioned the technology being better, and I bet you he probably would be open to it. But I'm kind of in the same school with Mr. Holzer. That I like to use a transmedium and use like our abilities to read the location. But if you had to use, let's say, a investigation tool at, say, a haunted hotel, what tool would you use and why?
um, digital recorder.
Okay.
And the reason why is because I believe, again, we've only scratched the surface on instrumental transcommunication. So there's so much to be learned with just simple electronic voice phenomena, EVP. There's so much to be, because where's that coming from? When you know that you are in a location, there's no outside noise, that you're nowhere near where you could be picking up any noise from any sort of radius, right? And you're picking up relevant responses, or names and things on a recorder that nobody else said. That is the most amazing thing to me. More than just, lights flickering on and off on a gadget. That is real. That is something tangible. That is a voice from somewhere. It wasn't you or anybody in your crew. It came from somewhere else. Where did it come from? Are we truly speaking to the other side? So I would not leave without a digital recorder. I think anybody, even those that are just starting out, they need to have a good digital recorder and just go in with that. Maybe even a notepad or anything else, just to mark, timestamp, whatever. And now they can timestamp themselves. But I would recommend anybody take a digital recorder and just see what happens, because I've had so many amazing experiences just with my recorder.
Yeah, I mean, I still get blown away when I'm at a location and then you like do a burst session and you hear what's been recorded while you're there, and it's like, oh my, it's shocking to me. It's like shocking to hear this other voice, especially if it's a class A.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I've had my name come through. Um, I've had an EVP start out in a female voice and end in a male voice. Strange, really strange things that it just makes you want to know more about. Okay, what's going on here? And it's never failed me. My recorder has never failed me. So that's one that I would not go without for sure.
So, as someone that was the tech guy on the Holzer Files, what piece of equipment that you use that you would not recommend using at a haunted hotel?
Um, I would not necessarily. That's a good question. I would say be very careful when using the SLS camera. Now,
Okay.
I love the SLS camera, and there's been a lot of modifications and things going along the way that's helped improve it, but it can present a lot of false positives at times. So let's say that you're walking into a room and there's a coat rack in the corner. Well, you're walking into a pitch dark room, according to you, and you can't see anything in front of you. You're just looking at the screen, right? Well, the camera shoots different IR light, and it tries to map out the head, shoulders, knees, and toes of an object, right? It tries to make sense of it. So, a coat rack, for example, it will try to map out a human figure. It would try to map out like a head, shoulders, knees, and toes, but it has nothing to do with a spirit or ghost. It has everything to do with that coat rack in the corner that's giving you a false positive, making you think that it's a spirit there, but it's just mapping out that inanimate object that's there. I've seen it actually do the same in dressers, like what do you call those?
Like a bureau or like a
Right,
writing. Okay.
right. And it try to map out a figure there when it's not anything paranormal. It just has to do with the objects in the room. So I would say, it has its place in investigations, but be very careful because it can produce false positives, and you got to make sure that you are eliminating all of those before you claim that something is paranormal or not.
Yeah, I've been kind of apprehensive to use the SLS. I did use it when filming the Curse of the Z board because Chris Fleming had it. So I'm like, oh, this
Yeah,
is kind of cool. But then I saw like a stick figure in the woods. I gave it back to Chris because it was because I
yeah,
was.
yeah. And I've seen things I couldn't explain using the SLS, so I'm not knocking it at all. I'm just saying, just be aware of those things going into it. And I think anybody that uses equipment during investigations, know your equipment. It's very important to just know how it works, know what can trigger some false positives, so that way you can eliminate those, and it can better help you understand whether something paranormal is going on or not. I mean, it's just good to know your equipment regardless. And the SLS can have those false positives if you don't know what you're looking for.
I don't remember when I first started investigating Shane. I had a FLIR gun, and I was so excited about having my FLIR. So I was using the FLIR, and a FLIR is thermodynamic, so it's going to pick up, heat, and it'll take sometimes take the shape of a humanoid or a person if you scan it on a person. Well, I was using the FLIR, and apparently there was a window with the FLIR, and I was like waving at the. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's waving back at me. And
Yeah.
it turns out it was my reflection.
Yeah, yeah. But you know what? It's very easy. It's very easy to think it's something else, though. I mean, that's one of those things. I mean, because it looks cool, and you're like, oh my god, there's a figure there. Um, but yeah, it all goes back to just knowing and understanding how it works, and what can cause it. Because I've seen, even with the thermal cameras, even like it'll pick up a shadow, like the shadow of the person right beside it sometimes can leave like a bluish type, like a colder signature, and you think that it's somebody standing behind somebody else, but it's just really their um, the shadow behind them reflecting on the wall that is just picking that up. It's really weird how that works,
It really,
but
I don't. I've even picked up stuff like when, say, someone's sitting on a chair or a couch, and they sit up, and you have the FLIR on the couch, and you can see the imprint because it's the heat imprint on the couch, and you're like, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Oh,
yeah.
someone just sat there a second ago." So
Yeah, yeah, you got to be very careful, because then you could say, "Oh my God, there's somebody standing," and then you could be talking to, uh, Sam's butt print, for the next 20 minutes, and it has nothing to do with any spirit there. It's just you were there, and yeah. So you got to be careful.
So Shane, so I ask everybody this in haunted hotels: if you can stay one night in any room in the Boo in the country, where would you stay and why?
And you said in any room.
Room with a Boo, so any haunted hotel in the country, where would you stay and why?
Mm, I think that's a good question. I think I would stay in the Stanley. The only reason why I say that is I've never been,
Oh
and
wow,
and
okay.
again, I don't know too much information surrounding it, because I try to keep distant with that until I go to the location and see for myself. But I would say the Stanley. The reason why is because I've never been there, but I know it's infamous. A lot of people have been there and have had their experiences. So I would say the Stanley for sure, and I would stay in one of the rooms there. Hopefully, one of the most haunted rooms there.
So for those that don't know, so Stanley Hotel is probably the most talked about room with a Boo or haunted hotel on this show. So I always ask everybody, and they always say the Stanley Hotel. What's also significant about it too, so it inspired Stephen King's The Shining, and it's also for when we do what is called the Estes method, which is where you wear noise cancellation earphones, a blindfold, and a Spirit Box 7, and you basically spew out what you hear. That was actually created at Estes Park or at the Stanley Hotel. So it does have a paranormal tie to it as well.
Right. That's and I knew that. I knew the method was there, but yeah, you're absolutely right. The Shining. How could I forget that? That would be just a reason in and of itself. Just inspiration for The Shining is just and plus, like I said, I've heard so many great things about the hotel. So yeah, that would be a spot that I definitely want to stay at and see what happens.
Well, Shane Pittman, it was awesome catching up with you, and I'm so proud that how you've like kind of took this situation and turned it into to something positive with the Holzer Files, and I'm also proud of what you were able to accomplish with the Holzer Files. It was again, it was a fantastic show, and we're all fingers crossed for hopefully a reunion or maybe a season 3 at some point.
Well, thank you so much, Sam. I really appreciate it. And it's friends like you and people like you that kind of help push us forward and push me forward into continuing what I'm doing, and just having that support alone means a lot. So thank you so much.
We're definitely supporting you and cheering you on for in 2022. And Shane, for people to find out more information, what is your website?
My website is officialshanepittman.com. You can find all of the updates and things I'm doing there, and you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, um, Facebook. Just look up Shane Pittman and you'll find me.
And one more thing. So New Year's 2022, do you have any New Year's resolutions?
Um, Yeah, to get my show done.
Good.
Yeah, get my show done. I would say lose weight, but I'm always so bad about that. So especially around the holidays, what'll happen is I will, all that holiday food, I'll make these resolutions and it just doesn't happen that way because all of the good food, especially Thanksgiving time, the turkey and the ham, that's going to carry on well into 2022. Just all the pounds that I packed on for that. But yeah, I'd say just on a professional level, making sure that I get my show off the ground and get that done. That's something that's been in the works for, like I said, over a decade, and I want to see that to completion. So yeah,
I definitely see that happening, and, like I think that like putting that out to the universe, like putting that positive energy, our brains are powerful, so like that can actually have it manifest. And also
awesome.
too, the losing weight. So every time, so I'm originally from the South myself, and every time I go home, I gain 20 pounds. So I know how
It,
Southern cooking is.
it's all this Southern cooking, man. We cannot. I mean, it's near impossible to lose the weight when you have all this good cooking around here. It's hard.
Well, Shane Pittman, it was a joy having you on Haunted Hotels with Sam Baltrusis. We'll see you next week on Haunted Hotels.
Thank you so much.
My Paranormal Network.